I am going to get Orange Man bad. I'm going to get him one way or another. We tried to get him during the election campaign and we failed. Now we're going to get him with impeachment. And if that fails, I hope his productive detail is good because he's going to need it.
You know, folks, do you really think that that's, they're beyond this? The administrative state's beyond that. Well, if you listen to my impeachment origins, roots, the Impeachment Roots podcast, I laid out a pretty decent case that the corruption in Ukraine and all of this has an awful lot more to do with the administrative state than anyone cares to let on. And the linkage is rather clear. The most important piece of that linkage is this black guy, Mr. Black, Mitt Romney's national security advisor during his failed campaign, and coincidentally, or not, the national counterterrorism director at the time of 9/11, and how that all ties in. By the way, and he gets his board post right after Hunter Biden leaves because, Mr. Biden is no longer useful as a back channel into the United States for illicit, shall we say, foreign policy goals that might be fueled by a little money, a little election interference, whatever have you. But, Joe Biden is no longer a conduit, but Mitt Romney is a senator. And so there's the connection for you. And all of this connects back through Biden and then Brennan, who, all right. So, but why is it that they focused on President Trump? Because, here's the thing, folks. When you look at it, you say, well, why is this one guy so important to them? Why is the focus that we have to create all these false narratives? The Russian collusion hoax, which we now know was complete bullshit. There was nothing to it. It was a complete farce. There were lies told. It was perjured testimony before the FISA court. We now know that. That's factual. The entire concept of this, the whole thing was shopped not just there, but to McCain as well. And all of this was manufactured. It was garbage. And, it's easy enough to say this was just about Hillary Clinton and the DNC and they're trying to win the election. But why was it so important that you go to these guys and by God, you got to stop Trump? Why do you have to stop Trump? I'm going to go back to an article that was written on February 16th of 2016, before the election, during the debate, folks. Saturday, Republican presidential debate. Before the convention, here's what Donald Trump said during that debate. You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you they lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none. And they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction. 10 seconds of truth on the war in Iraq and Bush out of Donald Trump at that time, before the convention, before he won, before he became president. That right there was enough. Because what Donald Trump said was not only the truth, but he made clear that he was not going to buy it was just bad intelligence. He also wasn't going to buy and by the way, remember the first piece of supposed justification that Bush tried to run, Wolfowitz and all these other guys, was that Saddam was the one who was involved in the 9/11 attacks. Oh, wait, you don't remember that, do you? You got short memories, Americans. Yeah, I remember it very well. Within hours after 9/11 happened, it was circulated all over the place that the federal government was reasonably convinced that Saddam Hussein in Iraq was responsible. Then, rather quickly, it became clear that it was bin Laden, and bin Laden, by the way, is Saudi. And the Saudis and the Iraqis don't exactly love each other. Not to mention that there's little geographical problems. There's all kinds of problems with that. All right. So that narrative collapsed, and then they went to the weapons of mass destruction thing, yellow cake, and all this other nonsense. All right. So here is the thing. The first Iraq invasion was arguably lawful and reasonable given that Saddam went into Kuwait. Now, there's also allegations that have been floating around for a long time, nobody's proved them, that our CIA gave Saddam the green light to go into Kuwait. We told him we wouldn't interfere. which, of course, was a lie. All right. But you have a group of people, a large group of people in the so-called administrative state. These are unelected officials, folks. These are the unelected permanent class in Washington, D.C., the policy advisors and everything else, and the CIA directors and this and that and the other thing. Yeah, they get appointed, but they are so-called career bureaucrats, if you will, career spooks, who have had this idea for the last 50-plus years that we have the right, we should, as a manifest destiny kind of thing, control the direction of the Middle East. And not just there, all over the world. Now, let's tie this all together. Candidate Trump, in February of 2016, announced that he wasn't going to go along with the bullshit. And at that moment, those people knew there was a very real risk that all the machinery that they had put in place, all the garbage that they had run, not just with Iraq, but everywhere else, was going to be exposed. And the granddaddy of all of it was 9/11. Because you know what? That we went over into foreign countries without a reason, that we overthrew their governments. Listen, we did this in South and Central America, okay? Who remembers the Contras and, the Sandinistas and all that nonsense? Oliver North, who got in a fair, decent bit of trouble. The illegal running of arms, the illegal running of drugs by the CIA, which, oh, by the way, into the United States. They were running drugs into the United States, poisoning Americans. Nobody went to jail for that. The American public didn't get all that outraged. There's drugs, but all those bad druggies, they'd use them anyway. And gee, we have that thing going on with the with the Contras and Sandinistas, but that's over there. And we had two Iraq wars. One was arguably a just war in that Saddam did go into Kuwait, and then we were asked to come and help them. The Kuwaitis were our friends. We went and we kicked their ass. Okay, that's fine. The second one, okay, that was bullshit, but we weren't all that exercised about that one either. But do you really think that the American people would sit back if they knew that 3,000 Americans were murdered by a bunch of jihadis that were intentionally let into the U.S.? That our administrative state, knowing full well that these jihadis were intending to do something awful, maybe they didn't know exactly what it was at the beginning, but they knew these were bad hombres, that they were coming here to commit some kind of terrorism, and they were explicitly allowed into the U.S. and allowed to murder 3,000 Americans in an attempt to manufacture a pretext for interference in the political affairs of the Middle East and toppling regimes there. What if that's where this rabbit hole goes? And you have a presidential candidate who gets up on stage and during a debate, before he is the nominee, says out loud what an awful lot of people in this country had thought, that Bush lied and people died. But if Bush lied, why did Bush lie? What was his ulterior purpose? What was going on? And oh, by the way, the proximity to 9/11 and the Iraq war in a couple of years later, we did go into Iraq a couple of years later, didn't we? You start unwinding that ball of string, and you may just find the people who were responsible, and that it wasn't an accident, it wasn't an oversight, that there was deliberate blindness within certain members of our administrative state. They let those people in this country on purpose, and then on top of it, when the hinky goings-on were reported, they ignored the reports. And it wasn't bumbling, it was intentional. What if you pull this string and that's what you find? Has this ever been investigated? Has it ever been run to the ground? Has anyone ever been named in public in a public hearing in front of Congress as to exactly how those hijackers got into the United States, how they managed to get Florida driver licenses? Why is it that you had former military officers calling the FBI saying, I got guys down here with wads of $100 bills and headscarves on and prayer mats. They want to take flying lessons, but they don't want to know how to land. The fact that that was called into the FBI is documented. Who didn't investigate? Why wasn't it investigated? Why didn't somebody go down there and check this out? And oh, by the way, why didn't we go figure out who those guys were and then run down where those visas came from and who stamped them? Why hasn't this all been brought out in public? Nobody has. Bush didn't do it. Bush seems to have been in on it with Wolfowitz and everybody else. All right? Well, guess what? Barack Obama gets in, and who's he appointed as CIA director? Brennan. Oh, well, gee, that's convenient. So Barry Obama was okay with all this too? Maybe so. Maybe Barry Obama was told, you just leave this alone. Don't go anywhere near it. But Trump comes on the stage prior to the nomination and calls bullshit on the whole story. And you want to know when it all went into overdrive trying to make sure that he didn't win? It was right there. You think I'm wrong? You tell me why that one statement on stage wasn't enough reason for everybody in the administrative state to say, oh crap. We got a guy up here who not only does he not believe the narrative, he's willing to say it in public. And we're not talking about some crazy with a bumper sticker on the back of their car. This guy could be president of the United States. He could actually dig into this. And oh, by the way, as president of the United States, he has the power to declassify anything he wants. Think about that one, folks. You want to know where impeachment's coming from? It's coming from right there. You want to know where election interference is coming from out of the Ukraine in 2016, and now they're trying to do it again for the next time around? It's right there. They can't beat him. They'll try to impeach him. If they can't impeach him because the Senate won't convict, what do you think comes next? You think I'm wrong? Explain why. You got the comment section. Have at it. I'm your ticker guy, and that's my view.